All right. Hi, everyone. Welcome to episode 2 of the 2021 HSMAI Minnesota Live series. I'm Stephen Dickey, your Minnesota chapter president, and joining me today is Charlie Stocker, customer success manager with Revinate. Welcome, Charlie. So very excited to hear what Charlie has to say, but first I want to have a couple updates as always about HSMAI. We have to check out hsmai-minnesota.com to register for all the open webinars we have out there. We have a few open ones. And you'll also see that we have a hybrid event in April coming up that we're doing the final touches on. And so registration is going to open for that soon. We're so excited to see you in person. And we're also making the meeting available online using another partner for hybrid and online attendees. And also follow us on LinkedIn and Facebook to stay up to date with current information and events about HSMAI in the Americas. And then lastly, I always have to do this every meeting, is if you want to get more involved at HSMAI Minnesota, please reach out to us. There's various ways you can get involved. You can be a partner sponsor. You can host a meeting at your venue, and you could also volunteer to help plan events, create content, and network with other professionals in the hospitality industry in Minnesota. So contact us via the website. There's a contact form at the bottom of the screen there, or shoot us an email, which is also on the website. So just a couple quick updates there. Excited to see you soon, but we'll get on with our next episode with Charlie from Revinate to talk about managing customer reputation in the era of COVID. Charlie, awesome. Take it away.
Cool, thank you. Thanks, Stephen. Appreciate the introduction. So I first wanted to give a shout out to Dan from Regency. He was kind enough to invite me to speak with everybody here today. So excited to be talking with you all. I know this is a really hot topic, hot button item for everybody in our industry, and certainly, for the past, whatever it's been, now 14 months or so, very timely. And I've spoken with lots of customers about these same topics. So I'm excited to be sharing them with you and sharing these insights. Since our group is a little bit smaller today, I'd love for this to be as conversational as possible. So, if anybody has any questions as we go through these slides, as it pertains to your particular property or area or segment or anything like that under the sun, feel free to ask those. I want to be sure that we're tailoring this to what is relevant and matters to you. So don't be afraid to interrupt me here. So just a quick intro. This is me, Charlie. I'm a customer success manager here at Revinate. For those of you who aren't familiar with Revinate, we're a platform specifically designed for hoteliers. We offer reputation management, survey options for collecting guest feedback, as well as CRM and marketing capabilities. So kind of fully encompass all of your needs from a hotel perspective. For my background, I've been at Revinate for about 2-ish years now. Prior to that, I spent about 6-7 years in the hospitality industry, mostly in the operation side of things for companies like Two Roads, Joie Omni Hotels and Resorts. So have a fair amount of experience in that realm, and hopefully can make this relatable to what you'll be seeing in your day-to-day work as hoteliers. So for today's presentation, I'm going to be going over a few main topics, be starting with some global trends just so we can get a big picture of what's been going on in the world in this past year. Then we'll talk about really managing your online presence and reputation during this time, what that means, what you can do around that. Then talking about collecting feedback surrounding your operations and making operational improvements on that. And then lastly, and kind of where I want to spend probably most of the time, is really preparing for, what we call the COVID rebound, preparing for the future. How as hoteliers, we can think to the future, look for when, business gets back to really those occupancy ADR levels that we're accustomed to, and how do we prepare for that moving forward. So that sounds good to everybody. We will hop right in here. I'm going to start with some global trends for 2020. So we do a lot of market research. We collect a lot of data from all of our customers across the globe. We're a global company, so we pull in all that information. We actually conducted a recent study where we interviewed travelers and hoteliers and kind of found some interesting information about how COVID-19 has affected travel plans. 68% of recent travelers had current or future travel plans affected by COVID-19. And I'm sure we've all seen that impact, but just so you know how great of an impact that has been, and you can put some numbers to that. 40% of travelers reported canceling a trip and 27% said they postponed it due to COVID-19. So big impact, obviously, this has had on our industry. When we kind of break down how that translates into numbers in terms of our reputation online, reviews globally, a big difference between 2019 and 2020. The global review volume has been almost halved. So 54%. 2020 saw 49 million reviews written globally, whereas 2019 saw 106. So when you're thinking about your property and the distribution of reviews, number of reviews you've seen, know that you're not alone if you've seen a big dip in that. This is a global trend that's been going across everywhere and has had some major impacts. Some kind of interesting things we saw in 2019 versus 2020. This slide shows the distribution of top review sites globally. So I want you to look at this and then kind of think in the back of your mind, okay, when thinking about my property, what are my top review sites over the past year or two? Where have we stacked up? Where are most of my reviews coming from? Some of kind of the interesting things here is that Booking.com is now taken over from Google as the global review volume leader. That just happened in this past year. Really interesting thing to note, we've typically seen Google as this market shareholder in terms of review volume, and now Booking has surpassed that. So an interesting one to keep an eye on, certainly as hoteliers, making sure that we're keeping a pulse on Booking.com, what's going on with that. Do we need to pay more attention to responding to those reviews? Ctrip and Marriott online reviews have replaced Agoda and Facebook in review volume in 2019. Agoda and Facebook were the last two spots, and they've now been replaced by Marriott online reviews, IHG, and Ctrip, which is actually a Chinese branded specifically review site. So interesting to see the Chinese market coming up so far in that. And then
Charlie, I'm sorry to interrupt.
Please.
I've got a question on here.
Sure.
Do you, and I might have missed it, do you know maybe why there's such a huge swing there from Google to Booking.com? Did Booking.com change something with how they take reviews to make it easier for people to do reviews, or do you know what could have caused that? I might have missed it.
No, that's a great question, Dan. And you wouldn't be the first customer I've had that has asked that question. And we've looked into that. And in terms of, changes Booking.com has made, there's nothing fundamentally they've done on their site, to change their review process or things like that. So, which is why I say it's an interesting development. Google is typically very easy to leave reviews. It's a one click, Booking.com is a few more steps to do that. But, that's why I encourage properties, who are seeing trends that match this global stats that we're seeing to look back at their mix of business and see, okay, when I'm looking at my booking channels, do I see this also increase from Booking.com reviews? Am I seeing something different? It's been an interesting trend that is hard to pinpoint. And it's something we're still looking into. So I'm glad you brought that up. Thank you. So moving along, I wanted to share as well just some average ratings by hotel class. I'm sure folks on the call we have from hotels in maybe a few different hotel classes, but you can see kind of those rating scales year over year. For most of the hotel classes from economy up to upper upscale, saw a decrease in their review rating year over year. Interesting thing is that luxury property saw an increase by about 2%. Not a huge one, but a little bit. So that's the only class that in 2020, during this COVID era, saw a little bit of a bump in their review rating. Everybody else across the board saw a little bit of a decline, which certainly ties hand in hand with review volume. And so now I want to talk about a little bit your online feedback.
Charlie, before you jump into that section, I had a question about the review volume that you were seeing, and you kind of hit it at the last slide.
Yeah, please.
It looks like the not the last one before that, or the that one, yeah. It looks like the most classes had a decline in ratings. Is that morely because of the volume of the ratings, and what was left was morely detractors than promoters, or how did the volume, the lower volume, impact the mix of ratings that you received?
Yeah, that's a good question. I don't have a super deep dive into these metrics since they're globally sourced. But we know that volume goes hand in hand pretty heavily with review ratings. Reason being that if you have any negative reviews, we know for sites like Expedia, like TripAdvisor, those things, it takes X number of reviews that are positive to cancel out one negative review, or even neutral reviews to cancel out that negative review. So review volume has a big impact on your negative reviews. I think as well, a lot of this has to do with restrictions that started coming out in 2020, and hotels kind of during the beginning of this, maybe scrambling a little bit to figure those out, changing their operations without communicating to guests and those things. So I certainly think that has had an impact as well, more towards the beginning half of 2020 in those ratings.
Great, thanks.
Yeah. All right, and so let's get into online feedback and reputation. This is a really, I think, important topic. For 2020, it was certainly unpopular, and 2021, it's going to be even more important. How are you managing your presence online? How are you managing your online feedback with a limited customer base and low occupancy? So when we talk about this goes back to the same study we conducted. 20% of global respondents said location was the top factor affecting their accommodation choice. So I want you to keep these stats in mind when we talk about the next couple of slides, and how we're highlighting our property, thinking about marketing ourselves, what customers are saying. Most importantly, what will be your top consideration when choosing accommodations on your next trip? 31% of people said safety and cleanliness. So that is the biggest hot button item for guests that are going to be booking during this time period that we're looking in. 2021 is safety and cleanliness. So we really want to keep that top of mind when we're thinking about how we're representing our brand, how we're representing our property online in our reputation. So kind of a couple things that you can think about and do as a property, making sure that on all of your channels you're having consistent messaging. So images, videos, details of your hotels. So all of your OTA sites, your websites, any communications you're having with your guests, making sure that the messaging you're giving about your safetiness, about your cleanliness, about what you're offering, what you're not offering, is consistent across the board. We want to make sure that we're hammering home all of these details in these online sites that are valuable to guests. Finding your brand voice, this is a really, really big one. Making sure that when we're responding to reviews, we're doing so in a manner that's consistent with our brand, consistent with the feeling we want to portray as a hotel or as a brand. Making sure, again, highlighting any changes we've made to our cleanliness procedures or standards, which goes a really long way towards our search engine optimization, right? Kind of throwing back those keywords when you're responding to reviews, when you're thinking about responding to them. If you've had enhanced safety measures, make sure you write those words specifically in your review responses, because that's going to help when the next guest is looking for instance, cleaning procedures in Minnetonka hotels, and then if you mention any of those in your reviews, that's going to pop up, help those guests book. And then making sure when you're looking at your reviews that are coming through for your property, you're looking for keywords that our guests are mentioning, like cleanliness, COVID, coronavirus, those things, taking a special interest into those topic categories, and making sure we're engaging with guests appropriately on those. So any questions on kind of how we can manage that reputation, that brand voice online? All right, we'll keep this moving. So feedback and your operations. We talked a little bit about, responding to guests, making sure that your presence online is being represented accurately, which is great and well. But I think the biggest thing that we rely on as hoteliers is going to be feedback from our guests, and how do we take that feedback and action on it, especially in these uncertain times. What can we do to improve our operations to drive business, return bookings? I think probably the biggest source of value for hoteliers is going to be some kind of survey that they're asking guests. So whether that be a post-stay survey, mid-stay survey, if you have something like that, if you don't, that's something I would highly recommend implementing. The great thing about those is that you have the ability to, kind of customize those questions, ask the guests what you want to learn from them. And the biggest part being is that I'm sure most of you have created new COVID procedures. You have either enhanced cleaning procedures from your housekeeping team, maybe different front check-in procedures, highlighting those in your survey, asking for feedback on those processes. Are they working? Do guests feel like they're safer? Do they feel more comfortable? Do they wish anything was different about them? Are they causing more of an inconvenience than they are a benefit? Those are the things you need to ask and make sure of in the feedback you're soliciting from guests. And then also, making sure that even when you're doing it on checkout, soliciting feedback in person if you don't have these tools at your disposal. And then kind of the third piece of that is obviously going back and analyzing that data. So what did the guests want to see more of, less of? What areas are most important right now? So we know that cleanliness, safety, right from our previous survey, 31% of travelers said that's most important for them on their next booking. So really kind of honing in on those areas and seeing what, as an operation, we can focus on for that to improve and invite repeat bookings, but also as well encourage future bookings by maybe changing some of our standards. Any questions on kind of how to action on or collect that feedback from your guests internally? All right.
Charlie, generally speaking, are you seeing where, it's more, and this could be too detailed of a question also, but are you seeing where it's more geographical based? Maybe the positivity or the negativity of reviews, or is it more just broad industry? I mean, are you seeing where in states that have been more restricted, are you seeing the reviews considerably lower for the similar type of class of property, or is that too detailed?
That's a good question. That's a little bit more detailed than we get into. Certainly for our customers, that's something you would be able to take a look into and kind of see that by region and look into that information. Just anecdotally, I oversee a lot of customers, all across the US, and I haven't noticed any, regional discrepancies of kind of high ratings and low ratings. Personally, I don't obviously have any data to back that up, but just from my experience, I haven't seen that. There are certainly pockets of, if we're not talking about ratings, but talking about occupancy, pockets of occupancy that are greater than others. And this typically tend to be, at least right now, drive markets, kind of the North Florida area, kind of the Carolina coast type things, and So it really kind of depends where you are in that aspect too.
Sure. Okay. Thank you.
So let's get into the road to recovery, which is kind of where I want to spend the bulk of our time today, talking about what you can do moving forward to really drive your revenue, drive bookings, and think towards the future. So when we're thinking about rebounding as a hotel, which most of us are doing, 5 key factors we want to think about when we're developing our strategy to win back demand. We want to nurture our guests. You want to get ahead of the curve now, right? You want to warm up your guests now so that you have their attention. So when they're ready to travel, ready to book, they already have you top of mind. You don't want to be late to the game. You don't want to start thinking about your strategy once occupancy has already rebounded, because you're already going to be behind the ball and behind your competitors who have already started that. Inquire, again, looking at your insights, what type of travel they do, what type of guests stay at your property, and then thinking about segmentation. So sending the right message at the right time to the right guest. So whatever tools you have at your disposal, making sure that you're using some kind of segmentation to make sure you're targeting the right folks. And we'll get into that a little bit more in the coming slides. When we think about our competition, how are we going to stand out from our competition, right? Everybody is in the same boat as us. So what are we doing as a property that differentiates us from the comp set? So, one of the biggest things when we think of that is, looking towards back maybe when we were property and we were brand new and we were opening, what are the strategies we implemented to let everybody know, hey, we're here, we're new, we're fresh, we're different than these people. Really kind of treating your rebound as a new opening is a great mindset. And then lastly, impact, thinking on the bright side of low occupancy, using this time and your bandwidth to execute memorable experiences, right? Making sure that the service you are providing on property is great, so that when we think about, our online reputation, those guests are leaving wonderful reviews. So that guests who are interested in booking, look at those and see, okay, now that things are back to normal, this is where I want to spend my time and money. This is where I want to go. So when we think about a rebound strategy, 68% of travelers who intend to stay at a hotel feel most comfortable booking where they stayed before. So repeat visits are king. So for a rebound strategy, previous guests are going to be probably the biggest segment that you're going to want to be targeting when we think about bringing back occupancy. And 70% of your travel is going to come domestically. So it's going to be mostly that drive market that's going to be coming first, followed way later by the fly market. So really thinking about targeting, within the state, within the city, within the surrounding states, thinking about guests who stayed with you previously. Guests are looking for, that sense of comfort, that sense of familiarity, and bringing them back in. It's going to be an easy way to drive your revenue. So booking considerations, people want to stick to familiar locations. I'll choose hotels with more limited services for less interaction. I want to see transparent communications. Just some kind of adjustments that folks have said in our survey. They want to see safety products, fewer amenities, limited number of occupants. So travelers are considering all of these new criteria when selecting a hotel. So this goes back to what we're talking about in our reputation, in our marketing collateral, making sure that we're really hammering home what we're doing to allay these people's fears, their concerns, and making sure that communication is consistent across all of our channels.
Charlie, that's really interesting how you mention hotels with more limited service. Usually you see marketing promotions out there going after, what kind of unique services they bring, and what kind of extra amenities they have. So what you're saying is what you're hearing in the survey is that that's not as attractive as it used to be.
Yeah, and I'm glad you brought that up, because a lot of folks like to rely, if they have outlets, amenities, things like that, F&B offerings, they really like to fall upon that for differentiation. what we've seen for customers who are interested in booking in the future is that, they're not necessarily going to be factoring those in as heavily as they did previously. They think that, those outlets, those added amenities is added risk. So, my suggestion would be is if you have those and they're open, obviously we want to drive business to those, but again, making sure that we're really solidly highlighting, okay, here's the differentiation from prior. These are our new standards, our new safety protocols, so that guests know it's not just the status quo with that.
Okay, great.
And so I just want to touch upon some segmentation ideas. So this is from actually a Hotel Tech Report, where they crowdsourced some ideas from hoteliers about kind of markets and bounce back and ways to target kind of your rebound strategy. So the first idea is obviously making an offer to loyal guests. Loyalty can be defined in lots of ways. Number of stays, lifetime spend, always good ways to look at that. Geolocation, always going to be popular, as we said. Folks are going to be driving in the rebound. You want to think about your local guests, because those are going to be the first ones to start traveling in your area. And then lastly, talking about booking channel or rate codes, offering discounted gift cards with no expiration date to all direct bookers is a big one as well. And I want to hammer home, the no expiration date is always important, because people are still a little bit wary about booking when they don't know how things are going to change. So an easy way for you to kind of drive revenue while giving guests that comfort and peace of mind there. And now I want to talk a little bit about the pre-travel phase. So, prior to guest booking, we're talking about leveraging your database to really inspire and engage guests. So when we're talking about pre-booking, again, going back to, thinking how long did it take us to ramp up our occupancy after the hotel just opened or after we had a big renovation? What initiatives did we run? What amenities did we offer? Really think about your brand. What's your vision? What's your mission? And really lean heavily into that, because that's going to be your biggest strength. So some kind of examples that we have here. And I'm going to share this deck afterwards, so don't have to scramble writing everything down here. This is a great one from the ACE Portland. They sent this to guests who've been on property in the last year. If you notice, there's no actual selling in this campaign. There's no book now links or anything like that. They shared a local band playlist along with postcards from previous guests. And this had really high engagement. So an open rate of around 36%, click-through of 6%. So there's nothing being sold in this campaign. This is just one that's letting guests know, hey, we're still here, we're still relevant. Keep us top of mind, so that when you're thinking about booking next, kind of where to start looking. So this is really, again, what we were talking about kind of leaning heavily into your brand, your image, and the voice that you're trying to convey. Another one here is talking about COVID updates. Again, we've been hammering on that. If you have a hotel that's partnering with someone who's doing enhanced cleaning protocols for your property, highlight that, share that with your guests. Communicate those brand partnerships and the actions that you've taken before, you might reopen to the public. Here's one from the Landmark London. A good thing that they can do within one of their campaigns is they're actually collecting data to enrich their profiles before they reopen. So you can say, what are your interests? Where do you live in? Anything like that. So if you sent some kind of survey to your guests in that respect, really using this downtime to collect data, so that, when we're thinking about our rebound period, we're looking at, okay, now hyper segmentation, I can go send the right message to the right time to the right people, using these specific data points that I've collected. And then when we're thinking about driving revenue, this is one from MacArthur Place in Sonoma in California, where they talked about giving away a 3-night stay. They had spa treatments, dining credits, more. So kind of getting creative with any offers that you do have, and knowing more about your guests in that respect. So I think the biggest message from all of this is using the data at hand. And if you don't have it at hand, finding a way that you can get this to really know your guests, know your database, and learn, what separates yourself from your competitors, so that, you're targeting the right folks that are going to be bringing in revenue. You don't want to be sending your marketing campaigns to, your fly market right now, who's not going to be driving any revenue. That's just going to be a waste of your time and a waste of your efforts. This is a really good one for a 6 hotel specific kind of welcome back campaign when they just reopened. This went out for Arizona when they announced that pools and water parks can reopen. And they saw a really great click-through and open rate for this. So making sure that if you do have any kind of things that are relevant to your city, your area, you can always highlight those. This is a good one to target based upon geolocation. This is another one in Sonoma, targeting campaigns for guests within driving distance, inviting them for some rest and relaxation. They had a package offer as well. One of the really great things that people are going to like now is a flexible cancellation. So again, that goes back to, the gift card example we were saying with no expiration date, being flexible with your cancellations. Guests are still in that uncertain period. So if you can give them some comfort, with that cancellation, they're going to feel a lot better about booking with you during these uncertain times, if you can have some flexibility with that. And then the last part of this we're talking about is kind of the fly market here, right? Kind of the last segment of the rebound, which is going to come after the drive market. So when we're thinking about targeting to our fly market, collaborating, with our DMOs, direct marketing organizations, and we can collaborate with those external travel agencies, any of our authorities, tracking trends on COVID initiatives from them, really thinking about what would inspire a guest to invest in and buy a plane ticket and travel to your specific property and your destination. People have been pent up during all this time. A lot of folks don't have a lot of money, but they want to spend it and they want to travel. What is going to differentiate your property, and how are you going to get your name out there? So this again goes back looking at your past database, in the past, 18 months, which fly markets have you had the most visitors in? And again, going back and targeting those same markets that are already a win for you. Looking at maybe, what percentage of those guests are couples, families, singles, and hyper segmenting those, really targeting your campaigns to your specific audience. So lots of details in there of kind of hopefully examples of what you can do to really rebound during this time. We're kind of running towards the end, so I wanted to wrap up here. Say thank you everybody for having me. I appreciate you joining me, and see if there's any kind of questions anybody has on anything that was shared, or if you have anything specific to your property or any questions like that I could help answer to you if we're talking about strategies for COVID and rebounding, anything like that.
Thanks, Charlie. This was all great. There's good examples of what what hotels can do, and what they can do to attract their guests back, or it sounds like attracting a guest back is the best way to do it. New guests might be a little bit more timid, but having cleanliness and flexible cancellation policy seem to be the best route there. One thing I did notice, and for those of you that listened on last month's episode, was that we talked about resetting the revenue management strategy, and again here it looks like resetting your marketing strategy as well is important to understand what the new guest needs are, because they have changed, and so it's important to kind of go back to the drawing board a little bit and see what's different in your market. What type of amenities do guests like now, and what do they value? And it's a lot different than it was 18 months ago. So So these are really good points to bring up. So thank you.
Yeah. Yeah, you're most welcome. And I'm glad you highlighted that, Stephen. I think, the biggest thing I like to tell people is basically treat this time like, you're a brand new hotel opening. You want to be scrappy about the business you're trying to get, don't rely on, your old tactics, kind of take a new, fresh perspective at the way you're marketing and trying to capture your business.
Mm-hmm.
Charlie, a question for you, if you don't mind.
Sure.
When it comes to reviews that you're seeing across your organization, what are kind of some of the new or more recent themes when it comes to complaints with guest stays? Has that changed a lot?
Yeah, that's a good question, Gail. I think in terms of complaints, let me think on that. Nothing has really changed drastically, in terms of shifting complaints or guest issues. I think, it goes without saying, the biggest thing is you're going to get those guests anywhere and anytime who are, upset about any measures you've taken about closing amenities or limited services, which is to be expected. You're going to get those guests no matter what you do or what changes you make, which is why I say that making sure you're communicating any changes you have on property clearly across all of your channels everywhere. So, you don't have that one guest who books on hotels.com, and you never updated it because, they didn't see the information, making sure that when you're thinking about the confirmation letters you're sending or pre-arrival you're sending to guests to include that important information directly on that. So saying explicitly, this is what we're doing at check-in. These are the services we're offering, we're not offering, really kind of cover all your bases in that respect.
Curious as well if you have heard any similarities in and I'm a step removed from actually working for a hotel company, but understanding if people are like when we look at resort fees, right, to your point where some areas of a property may be closed, if there's been a change in any of that kind of across the industry during this time, or a reduction in some of those costs that might be not as appropriate right now due to some of those closures and lack of amenities and services.
Yeah, that's a good question. I think that's probably something that would have to be individually sussed out on a hotel basis, which goes back to what we're talking about, collecting feedback for your individual property. So, you could ask those questions on your survey. You could look and see if you're getting that feedback from guests and gauge if that's appropriate or not. I know, resort fees, amenity fees are a great, easy way to drive ancillary revenue, but you have to think, if we're cutting out 60% of those services, are we getting feedback from our guests that are pissed that they're paying for things they're not getting? So looking at that, and then also thinking, okay, we have limited amenities here, but what are other ways that I can show value for this? Maybe you tie in your enhanced cleaning standards to your resort fee and say, hey, since we've cut these amenities, but now added this is what it includes. Or if you're, adding a bottle of hand sanitizer in each room to make up for that, something like that. So you can get creative on that end.
Thanks.
Okay. Any other questions out there on the phone?
I'll just throw out there, Charlie. I mean, I utilize the Revinate platform for reputation management daily with our company, and I've found it to be very extremely useful, and a valuable tool for us for sure. And the reporting is great on it also. I appreciate you doing this for us today. I found it very informative and have some definite takeaways myself that can be used. So thank you so much for your time from me.
Awesome. Yeah, you're most welcome. Well, thanks everybody for hanging with me during this. I'll be sure to share this deck out so you can take it back to your teams, examine it a little closer if you'd like, and
Yeah.
enjoy the rest of your day and rest of your weeks for everybody.
Thanks, Charlie.
Yeah, thanks, Charlie. You can send that deck to me and I'll post it on our website. And this recording will be available on our YouTube channel and LinkedIn as you or wherever you may find us. And then just be sure to look at our website next month, or actually right now for our next meeting next month, 12 to 1, same time, Wednesday, March 24th. We welcome back Courtney from Minneapolis to give us another update on Minneapolis tourism. So that should be another great episode. So registration is open, register early, get it on your calendars, and we'll talk to everyone then. But thanks everyone for joining. Thank you, Charlie. And we'll see you all again next month.
Thanks all.
Bye, everyone.
Hey, Charlie.
Thank you.